Pennsylvania Principals Association. I want to welcome you again to our Thursday webinar, which we've been having every single week to give you updates on COVID-19 and some of the issues surrounding COVID-19 in your school districts as well. So if you're not muted, if you could go ahead and mute yourself so that we don't have any feedback coming back in. Again, as we do every single week, if you have a question, just a general question for me or for any of the panelists that will be talking a little bit later, please write your question in the chat room. And I have one of my staff members all the way over on the other side of the room monitoring that chat room, and we'll try to address those questions at the end. I also want to remind everyone that the session is being recorded, so if you have a colleague that couldn't be on the webinar right now, they can go back a little bit later to our website. And the link will be posted there as well as the previous webinars that we did. So I want to start by actually talking about economic furloughs, because that's one of the questions that we're getting right now, and I want to explain why we're getting that question. So Steph, if you could share our screen. So I want to go through a couple slides with you about economic furloughs and why we're getting that. This happened as a result of Act 55. Next slide, please. And so prior to November of 2017, a school district could suspend professional staff members for these reasons: a decline in pupil enrollment, a curtailment of an educational program, because of a decline in class or enrollment, consolidation of a school or merger, and then when new school districts are established. And the way that districts went about suspending people at that time was called LIFO, which means seniority was the rule. You all know that, you know, first in, last out type of thing. But that changed. Next slide, please. So after November 2017, one of the additional reason to suspend came into play as a result of Act 55. And that one was for economic reasons that require reduction in professional employees, which also made a whole process put into place. And also added this strict thing that seniority no longer rules, that evaluations are the first criteria for all suspensions now, all 5 of those. So you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about that right now? So here's the reason, and here's the reason why we're getting the question. One of the things about economic furloughs is that one of the processes is that 60 days before the adoption of the final budget for the school district, the district actually has to come up with a resolution that they intend, you know, to furlough some staff members for the next school year. And so we're seeing this across the state right now in a number of districts that are putting that resolution forward to abide by that timeline. That doesn't mean they're going to act on it, but if they don't do this, then they can't act on it 60 days from now as far as their budget. And why are school districts doing that right now? Well, for the simple reason is they don't know what COVID-19 and the impact of their budget is going to be for the next year. As most of you know, with people not working, the earned income revenue will be down, as well as there's some talk about extending the school property tax issue for people to pay a little bit later to give them more time to get back on their feet. So school districts are looking for a loss of revenue right now, and we don't know exactly what the state budget is going to come in as. So those 3 factors will really cause districts to have to look at their budgets very, very closely and carefully, and putting things into place to have some of those reductions. So you're going to see in this month, in April, which is 30 days prior to the adoption of a budget in June, why some districts right now are putting that resolution forward. And principals are really asking, so what happens with that? Next slide. So here is that process. 60 days prior to the date of the adoption, the board has to approve a resolution. And those suspensions have to be approved by a majority vote. The district also must show these following things. What are the economic conditions that are present or will be present that make the suspensions necessary? What's a description of other cost-saving measures taken by the district, not just suspensions? And what is the number and the percentage of employees to be suspended who provide direct instruction? Now, as most of you know, hopefully you know this, is that when you're suspending professional employees, the law says you have to look at the administrative staff and suspend an equally proportionate percentage of those. And that's the last bullet, number of percentage of employees who are administrative staff. So for example, if you're suspending employees, a percentage of employees, and that's 2%, then you would have to look at an equal percentage of the administrative staff, 2% of the administrative staff, to be furloughed as well. Now, there are some waivers and some cautions there, so that if the administrative staff is already light and there would be a detrimental impact, then the superintendent could ask for a waiver of that. So just so you know, so if you see that coming forward and that the district is putting forward a furlough professional employees, we should also be thinking about, and that's why I'm bringing it up for our school leaders. Now, administrative staff doesn't have to be just Act 93 employees. We've gotten that question before. It could be anybody on the administrative staff. Next slide. And if seniority doesn't rule, what does rule? Well, most of you know that evaluations are the ruling thing first and then seniority. And by the way, I covered this last week, that you still have to complete, the districts still have to complete all teacher evaluations for the year, as well as principal evaluations for the year. And if you don't know this now, as you know, that's for teachers and principal, it's 100% classroom observation for teachers, 100% for the framework for leadership. And you would have to use the adjusted forms that are on the PDE website under educator effectiveness. Now, I was just on that site before I came down, so they have the new 82-1 form, which removes the teacher-specific data, the SPP score, all of that. So make sure you're using that new form to complete those evaluations. And here are the buckets. As you know, if you're going to suspend or furlough a teacher, you have to look at the buckets. It looks at their evaluations. And as you can see, the people that are most protected are in that fourth bucket, that have either 2 distinguished or 1 distinguished and 1 proficient. So you'd have to look at their certification first and then put them in a bucket and then go from there. Next slide. So if all else is equal, as this says, then seniority does matter, since seniority is the second criteria. And in many cases, as you probably know, most people will be in that fourth bucket, so then seniority will matter. And the last slide I think we have. So one of the other things that came in, initially it wasn't in Act 55, but then it came in later, is what about bumping? Well, there are bumping rights still. So before you just had to look at certification, evaluation, and not bumping, and then that was changed as an amendment to the law a little bit later, that bumping rights are still in. So for example, if you had 2 Spanish teachers at the high school and you were going to furlough a Spanish teacher, you would look at their evaluation. So let's just say they were both in bucket number 4. So all that is even. They're both in bucket number 4. So then you would look at seniority. So the person with the most seniority would still be the Spanish teacher. The other person, you would have to look at what happens to them. Well, if that Spanish teacher had certification in another area, so let's say they just happen to have an elementary cert, right? Then they could bump a person in a lesser bucket or lesser seniority, because you can see this gets really kind of crazy with economic furloughs and the dominoes start to fall there. So I just bring this to your attention because we've gotten some questions about economic furloughs and why are districts doing those resolutions right now. And the answer to that is that they're protecting themselves because of the unknown budget and the impact on the budget for the next school year. Okay, next slide. So our topic today is on student transitions, and we have 5 principals that are going to join us today: Robert Farina, Dr. Maureen Letcher, Ruth Ann Barbazzini, Lou Magnata, and Andrew Levitsky. And we've asked them to talk about 5 to 7 minutes on what they're thinking about or doing about student transitions in their school districts, everything about graduation or to moving out of a middle school into a middle school, things like that. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat room. And I'm going to kind of turn it over to the panel members right now, and we'll start with Robert Farina. You'll have to unmute yourself, Rob. Can you unmute him? There we go. We're going to unmute you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe. It's nice to be back with everyone. I spoke a couple weeks ago about continuity of education. Just a reminder, I am the principal at Brandywine Heights Intermediate and Middle School outside of Topton, Pennsylvania. We're smack dab between Reading and Allentown. We're a small rural district. We service about 1,400 families, K to 12. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, as I operate 2 schools, a multitude of transitions from building to building. Let me share my screen with everyone. Oops, let me see that. All right. So just in talking about transitions, in my specific realm, I deal with 5 transitions this year. We're transitioning our 3rd graders from our elementary school to our intermediate, our 5th graders from our intermediate to our middle school. Now, please keep in mind my schools are housed in the same building, so those intermediate 5th graders are basically going downstairs to the middle school. So it's slightly less of a transition because they're occupying the same building. If you operate in a junior, senior high school model, you may have a similar type of transition. We're transitioning our 8th graders from the middle school to the high school. We're also looking at our inter-building transitions, again, students moving from 7th grade, 7th grade to 8th grade, et cetera. And then to throw a nice cherry on top of that for this year, we are undergoing a large construction project. So to keep that construction project flowing smoothly, the 3rd graders are going to be plucked out of the elementary school and housed in our intermediate school for 1 year due to this construction. So kids who would typically not be transitioning are going to be transitioning this year due to construction. So when we looked at transitions, my big thing is that we continue to work within our existing structures, although this is unprecedented and changing times. Keeping your existing structures going as much as possible tries to keep some of that normalcy there. So for all of our transitions, we would always hold a step-up day in May. We're going to still hold those. And I think this is where using your SIS is super important, because if you're doing a lot of your leveling for classes, maybe when students are moving from 8th to 9th, they're scheduling 5th to 6th when we start leveling classes. If you're able to input all of those course requests into your SIS, that's an easy way to populate everything. So going back to those step-up days, we are still going to hold step-up days for all of our incoming and outgoing students, 8th going to 9th, 4th or 3rd going to 4th, 2nd going to 3rd, et cetera. And the way we're going to be doing that is we're going to be creating videos by the teachers. So each of our teachers, we're going to try to replicate our virtual step-up day as closely as possible as we do when the students are in the building. So we are going to be doing a video where the teachers talk about the same type of information. And again, my kind of recommendation is don't make it boring, try to hype it up. We're including pictures and videos of our students at those different grade levels doing things. So we are a large music school. We have a lot of students involved in our chorus and band program, so we will be having them, some of their recording, some of their concerts playing in this video to bolster that participation there. I think it's also important that you're still holding parent information sessions. We're looking to do, so for each of our step-ups, 3 different parent Zoom sessions. We're trying to be very mindful of parents' work schedules. As I shared before, about 80% of our parents work for DECA car batteries, and they're still operating as an essential business. So we have a number of families who are working on different shifts. So we're offering morning, afternoon, and evening hour step-up sessions for parents, so they can ask questions, they can receive some information as well. And we're also then going to be following back up in the summer. So if we're able to hold in-school transition days, we will do that over the summer. Our thinking right now is that if we have to hold that over multiple days, so if gathering limitations of 10 or less are still in play, that we can set up days where we can have smaller groups of people come in, tour the school, get some of that information. Also, from a transition standpoint, we think it's important to hold special events as possible. I know some of our high school colleagues are going to talk about graduation and prom, which obviously are the big ones, but at the intermediate and middle levels, we're still looking to hold our award ceremonies. Wrap-up parties will be done through Zooms. For award ceremonies, our plan is we're going to tape it. So each teacher is going to record their little session. We're going to bundle that together, send that to families so they have that. And then, have it in here a little bit as a joke from the people who are from the 90s. Every video montage had that Time of Your Life Green Day song in it. We think this is a neat way to transition our kids out. Obviously not with that song because they don't know that song, but for our outgoing 8th graders, we're putting together a large montage of pictures and videos of them from 4th grade up until this point as a little bit of a send-off from that. We've included parents in the planning of that to send us pictures, and that's been pretty well received because we don't want our kids leaving our buildings feeling unnoticed or uncelebrated. And the last thing with those are don't be afraid to bring students back for future events. So our 8th graders who are leaving us, our plan is some of the things we weren't able to do in person this year. If we're able to do them next year, we're going to have them come back. We'll bring them back, for student breakfasts that we normally hold that they weren't able to participate in. From a special consideration standpoint, I really would recommend contacting parents now. Parents have a lot of questions, and I always like to tell our story before someone says to me, hey, what's happening with these things? So we've already communicated out to parents what can be communicated. So those transition dates, we're already putting on our calendar. So parents know we'll get the 3rd to 4th step-up video on this day, and then these are the dates and times for the 3rd to 4th step-up Zoom. So we're trying to take the question marks out of that for parents. Really trying to empathize with parents. We know this isn't the way they want their child to be transitioning out of a building or transitioning into a building, and we recognize that, and we're going to do everything we can to assist. Also really looking at IEPs. Obviously special education is a major component of all of online learning, but you do have a lot of students in your buildings, I'm sure, who have transition SDIs. So if they're leaving a building, what are some of the things that must be done over the summer to help that student transition? So please be mindful of those and communicate with families on how and if you can accommodate those. And lastly, some of the things that I've thought about is not violating security protocols. As we're talking about transitions and trying to get students used to a building that they've never toured, but they'll be going into next year, be very mindful of not putting up a virtual tour, a virtual walkthrough of your building. So from a security lens, it's probably not the best idea to have a virtual walkthrough of your school that would allow someone outside of your building to see the outline or maps of your school. That would pose a safety and security issue. So although it may seem like a nice way to show off your school to incoming students, it is something to be concerned about. And lastly, I think COVID has given us a lot of pause to think about our existing structures and where we can go in the future. So I think this is a really good time to think about what are some of those things that we're still doing paper and pencil that we need to do digital that would assist when we're not in the building with making transitions easier. And when always looking at transitions, one of the things we've tried to do in our district is so our incoming 4th graders, they visited my building on at least 4 occasions from kindergarten to 3rd grade. So they're familiar with the building. So what are some of those things that you could be doing throughout those students' experiences when they're in their prior buildings, so they are comfortable in your building to make transitions a little bit easier? So again, this is a good time to pause and think about how we do things and think about how this changes things and where we can go from the future. So that is all I have for everyone.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Really appreciate that. Really good thought about the virtual tours. I didn't really think about that from a safety and security standpoint going forward. That's really good advice. All right, let's turn to Maureen. Can you unmute Maureen next? She'll introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Letcher. I'm the high school principal at Hollidaysburg Area School District. My building has 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, about 900 students. We do have a traditional junior high here at Hollidaysburg, which is 7th, 8th, and 9th. So I can talk a little bit. Mainly what I'm going to focus on is our graduation plan, but I also, we have some things in place for the transition from 6th grade to 7th grade and 9th grade into 10th grade. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now. So this is our graduation proposal for the class of 2020 that we did get board approved and that we did roll out. And what it is the June one, which we all know most likely won't happen. The June 4th was to be our graduation date, and that is still considered the day, that last day of school and the day when the students are done. We did have our prom scheduled for the beginning of May. We got the venue for June 12th. That was the latest we could get, but this probably won't happen, as we know. But our goal was to have graduation practice on the 25th and have students sign their yearbooks and then do the traditional class picture that we do. But our July and August, we have a July 17th graduation date, and we also have an August 14th graduation date. We picked Fridays on purpose so that students, if they can go on vacation, and we do go on vacation, that they could either leave, come home a day early or leave a day late, whatever the case is. And obviously Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they could pick up their caps and gowns. What we thought, because the prom won't happen if we go beyond June, but we decided that we would have a graduation practice the night before graduation and then have a formal dance for the students. Now, there is not going to be a dress code required. However, we thought it would be really neat, especially for the young ladies, because many of them have their prom gowns. They could dress up. I always practice announcing the students' names at graduation, and they walk across the stage. So kind of like a prom promenade, they would be all dressed up. If we are not allowed to be inside a building at that time, but we are allowed to gather outside, graduation is always on the football field. We would just have a DJ and the dance would be on the football field. Otherwise, we are going to move into the gym where it would be air conditioned. So, and of course the graduation picture. So our July and August are the same plan there. As we've received tons of positive feedback in regards to this, people are just thrilled that we have planned all the way to August to potentially give the students, and this is our transition for them. They just want to get together one more time. We met, my assistant principal, Mark Harrington, and I have met with all of the class officers from the different classes via Google Hangout. And that's what's kind of neat, easier for high school people because they're big people and we have meetings with them, and that's the best part of our day. And they're giving us their feedback, and they just miss their friends and want to get together. Now, as for moving ahead, we would make what would be a little bit non-traditional about the graduation ceremony is that we would induct the seniors that were to get into the National Honor Society. So we would have a small part of the graduation ceremony be that induction. We are going to push a letter out to parents today, actually, that explains that at the junior high level, the 9th graders that were to get into the National Junior Honor Society will be invited back next year to get inducted into the National Junior Honor Society. My 11th graders, who will next year be 12th graders that were to be inducted, will get inducted in September. So that's part of our transition plan with them. I think that it's important that they have that opportunity. We also had a board meeting last week and waived a number of policies. Obviously, the National Honor Society induction, there's a lot of different requirements there. We did ask that for the seniors, that it only be a grade, an average, a GPA requirement this year because we did not have the opportunity to collect all of the forms that they have to fill out and get all of the signatures and hand those in and then vet those. So we did have that waived at the board meeting. We also, in looking at this, and like I said, it is easier because we can at the high school level meet with the students. We had already had our 9th grade parent-student meeting, so we lucked out there of students moving from 9th into 10th grade, and the scheduling forms were filled out. We also had at the junior high the 8th grade meeting already for the parents for the 8th starting into 9th grade, since 9th grade is when it starts to count. And those scheduling forms have been filled out. The guidance counselors at both the junior high and senior high levels are meeting with parents and students, parents if possible, via Google Hangout if they did not already have their scheduling meetings. We hope to still have our 7th grade, next year's 7th grade tours in August, and our next year 10th grade tours in August. We did not get the 6th grade screeners done for the students going into 7th grade. However, we feel that we have enough data on those students, and we are letting the parents know that information about how that's going to be done. In celebration, and some course requests have also been done via Google Docs. Students have done their course requests that way. We're working on doing the master schedule for next year right now. In celebration, so they're not forgotten, because I know Robert had talked about that. If you on Facebook, people are posting in honor of the class of 2020 their senior pictures. So I have gathered all of my faculty and staff senior pictures who wish to share, and we're doing a video montage of those and pushing it out to the seniors tomorrow. I think they'll get a big kick out of that. Every day we are continuing our Tiger TV show, which is our morning news show that we do. And we are honoring the seniors in that. We are having different seniors do spotlights. We had the officers do a message, and each day at least 2 teachers do a message to the students so that they know that we're still thinking about them. And but items like that are what we're basically doing to stay in touch with them. A lot of the Google Hangouts. But that's our transition from 6th grade into 7th and 9th grade into 10th. We were just very lucky that we already had a lot of those meetings done and a lot of that scheduling information collected. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Maureen. That's a whole bunch of good information there. We've also heard from other principals of the high school. I think even last week shared a similar plan that you had, that the officers and the parents decided to do a date in June, July, and August. So that's great. Next up, we'll have Andrew share some thoughts as well. If you could unmute Andrew.
I think it's still officially this morning, so good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Levisky. I'm the principal at Springdale Junior Senior High School. We're located just outside of Pittsburgh. We're a small 7 through 12 high school, so I see some similarities with some of our panelists. In talking about graduation, just as a place to start and looking at the transition to graduation, one of the most important pieces for us as we were looking at how do we best celebrate our seniors. One thing that's very important at Allegheny Valley School District is getting student voices to be a part of the process and a part of planning. We just recently held meetings with our senior class. We held a morning meeting because, as you know, if you have your own kids, they're staying up very late and sometimes posting their work and working on their work at 2 and 3 in the morning. I know I'm seeing assignments come through as I'm part of teachers' classrooms, but we held a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting with our senior class. And we only have 65 students in our senior class. So I know that some of the principals on here might have a senior class of 300 or 400, but we are much smaller. And what we did is we asked the kids for their thoughts. And on that call, we had teachers, we had our superintendent, we had a lot of different folks in the district as a part of that call. And as the kids shared their thoughts, they talked about, could we do a parade? Could we use a local drive-in? But by and large, the big piece that our kids kept coming back to was they wanted to have as traditional a ceremony as they could. Uh, but the understanding being that we might need to look later in the year, whether it's June, July, could it be something in the fall? We did not at this point hammer down what those dates are going to be. We were sort of waiting to see what the governor was going to do with regard to what what areas of the state will be lifted, what we'll be able to do. So we have not picked exact dates yet, but we do know based upon the feedback provided from our kids that it's going to be something, hopefully, that's in person. Uh, personally, I've met with some companies. I don't know if anyone else on the panel has done this. In looking at high schools, the emails started to come as people tried to take advantage of virtual, if you will, commencement ceremonies. That's not something that we want to do. Obviously, there's a cost incurred to that as well. So one way that we've been working to honor our seniors as well, we actually have our kids producing a number of videos, looking at our video production kids. They've been working to put together some videos, some montages, if you will, that are going to start going out soon to our families, because we really want to honor. You look at in high school, we look at our senior athletes as an example. Didn't get to play their spring season, but how can we honor those kids as well? So we're actually working with our student council and with our video production courses to produce, and I don't know what it's going to look like yet. The kids are working on that, some interviews and some work to honor our kids. And that's really where our focus has been, of how do we honor our kids a little bit differently. Looking at some other Keystone events, we hold a big scholarship assembly every year, like I know a lot of high schools do. We're working right now to put together that virtual ceremony, because not only does that honor the academic accomplishments of our kids, but when you look at scholarships, it's often maybe an endowment that a family has in memory of a loved one who had passed away. So we're working with those families that give scholarships every year to maybe send a video on their iPhone that we're working to incorporate into a presentation that we're going to be doing in May with our seniors who are earning scholarships. So it's all different for all of us without a question, but we're looking at how to do a lot of those pieces virtually, with the hope that graduation is something that we can do hopefully in person. Uh, we keep telling our kids what's plan C or D or E. One thing that we've talked about a little bit with our seniors, and this came out during our collective class meetings, was the potential of maybe doing something on a Saturday in the fall. We know that some of our kids are going to college, jobs and things, and maybe making a day of it and doing something. We usually have a senior picnic and other senior type events, and being able to rent a space or use something in the district to make a day of it, if you will. I know that we could call it whatever you like, but to have a celebration that could conclude in a graduation in the fall for those kids as well. It's really about thinking differently. I don't have the answer at the end of the day. I don't think any of us have the final answer of what's going to work best, but we really, I just can't stress enough how important it's been for us to include our kids, because I think it allows them to feel a little bit better during this hard time as well, and to have some input. And thinking about some other important transitions, one that I don't think we've mentioned yet are our teachers, in the transition that our teachers have been having to an online environment. I think I don't know that necessarily fits in today, but it certainly is, in looking at my staff in particular in a 7 through 12 building, you see very quickly the different levels of technological savviness, and that certainly is a transition that I think could potentially face us as we look at starting the school year in the fall, and how we are supporting the transition of our teachers. And one thing we've been talking about a little bit, what about those sixth graders who are coming to our building? You all know as well as I do that those first few weeks of school, if you're transitioning a kid to a new building, a student to a new building, that's so critical to their success. And thinking about that planning process of, if we were in an online environment, how do we best support those new learners to a building to make them, feel as a part and build those relationships with your teachers, because it is so different when you're looking at each other through a screen. One final piece that we're really working hard to do at Allegheny Valley, and particularly at the high school, is events like I mentioned, was the scholarship assembly. We have an honors banquet every year to honor those academic achievements of all of our kids. You know, like with our scholarship assembly, we're working to put together something that is virtual to honor the academic accomplishments of our kids. And at the end of the day, I think if we all, and that's the best part of these meetings, we're able to hear each other's ideas. I think it's only going to benefit our profession and benefit our kids. When you look at finding the silver lining in all of this, that's what I keep telling my staff as we meet every Monday, is what is the silver lining that we can find in this experience? Because I've learned a lot about teaching online as well when it comes to supporting my staff. So I look forward to hearing what all of you have to share. Look forward to being able to answer any questions. And I give a shout out to Allegheny Valley School District, because our team really is banded together without a doubt. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew. That's great stuff to share. And you're right. I mean, these webinars have been all about sharing expertise and creativity with school leaders from around the state. And I know people have picked up on that. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Now we'll go to Ruth Ann. And if we can unmute Ruth Ann here. There you go.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? My name is Ruth Ann Barbazini. I am the principal of the Brookville Junior Senior High School in Brookville, Pennsylvania. I have been with the district for over 10 years. We're a small rural district in central Pennsylvania, and basically we have about 1,600 students in our district. Right now we have a little over 700 kids in junior senior high school, and I have 111 seniors that are going to be graduating this year. We have been really talking in for a lot of different reasons about the different aspects of graduation for our seniors, and helping them to celebrate and making it the transition into adulthood or college or military a smooth process for them. Because not only do we want to consider the celebration and the ceremony, but how are we going to help them, transition on. We have been doing extended learning for our students, and our seniors have worked very closely with our teachers on preparing portfolios and helping them to be ready to pursue careers or college material to send out to different colleges, helping them just for the next step besides the graduation ceremony. We are currently working on a plan to do our graduation in 2 different forms. We're kind of trying to do the best that we can to make it as personal as we can for the students. In a lot of different areas, we want to consider the family. I know as a mom myself, one of the big factors of graduation wasn't so much for my son to walk across the stage, but was for me to see my son walk across the stage. So we want to incorporate those thoughts in also with regards to the family. At this point, we are planning on doing a virtual portion of our graduation, which would include giving small groups of families to come in, like approximately 10 people come into our auditorium. The student come across our stage and receive their diploma using the social distancing criteria, and videoing that, and then compiling a video that would be more on the line of a story and a movie, and then we're going to take it to our local drive-in. And the owner of the local drive-in has been awesome. He has went above and beyond to provide us with the supports and services that we need to make it happen. We're going to put a stage out in front of the screen. We're going to allow our students to have their actual walk across our formal stage be streamed onto the screen. We'll do as much as we can to make it as normal as it has been in the past. So they'll get that opportunity to walk across the high school stage. And at the same time, if everything works out the way we would like it to work out, the opportunity to walk across the stage in front of the big screen and it be streamed on the stage as they pick up their diploma and go back to their vehicle. We'll have them located. Our theater is, our drive-in theater is capable of holding up to about 360 cars. So we'll be able to give the families an opportunity to come in with the seniors. We'll park them in an arrangement that's going to allow them to get out of their cars when their names are called. One of the plans, because obviously we're going to have to go in the evening when it's a little bit darker out. So incorporating things like golf carts to take them from their car to the stage, walk across the stage, get back in their golf cart and go back to their car. And then when it comes to doing the class announcement with the moving of the tassels, we've gone down as far as thinking about how to make that happen so that they are able to get out of their cars, do that as a group beside their cars, but then celebrate it by maybe doing one of those illuminating candles that send up the light in the middle of the evening, so that they can really do a nice gesture of saying we've now become alumni. I have worked really closely with the senior class officers, talking to them about, what their concerns are, about what, they would like to see happen. I've received a lot of communication from families, parents concerned that, their kids aren't going to be able to participate in a ceremony at all. We have considered postponing the ceremony. We currently have it scheduled for June 2nd, with the hope that some of the social distancing requirements will be lifted a little bit. So we will probably have to adjust to some aspect with regards to that social distancing, depending on where we're at in this process. But our goal is to make it as close to normal as we can. Obviously it won't be the perfect situation, but we're feeling that giving them that opportunity to walk across their stage and then still celebrating together as a group, and having that opportunity to have it on a large screen like the drive-in is probably even a little bit better than what we would normally do in graduation. So, I think we've brainstormed, we've come together with the community, with the parents and the students. Incorporating all of that is so important. This is their ceremony, not ours. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to make it the best that we can at this time, with considerations of all the safety factors that we need to put in place. So we've worked real hard. It's still in the transition phase with regards to planning for what if things are lifted. But at least we have, some of those logistics down, and we worked with the local police department to also be able to support us in all the aspects of that. Prior to the graduation ceremony, we're going to do a senior parade through town, and hopefully be able to allow the community to share in the celebration as they walk through from their elementary building to their junior middle school building and then to the high school, and just make it special for them all the way around. This has been a really tough time on all of our seniors, and I think that the more special we can make it, the better. As far as transitioning our kids from elementary to the junior high, we are planning a bridge camp over the summer. Once again, these are all dependent on the quarantine and the social distancing aspects. But our goal is to bring the kids in and provide them with the same kind of opportunities that we've had for our other students that have transitioned from one level to the next. So we'll be working closely with the parents to make arrangements to get them into our buildings and to be able to walk through the steps of what their schedule will look like, have them engage with their teachers, be able to socialize with other peers that are in the high school, in the junior high school, and make it, once again, comfortable for them also to transition. I can't emphasize enough how important this is, not just for the kids, but for their families. It is, as a parent myself, I know that, you know, going through these steps in a normal situation is emotional. So going through them with under these conditions have really heightened the emotions of a lot of the families. And we want to make it real. We want to make it comfortable. We want to make it as normal as we possibly can. But on top of that, we want to make it special, something that they'll always remember. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. I really appreciate those ideas and the creativity there as well. And I just have to say this is about our 4th or 5th week that we've been doing this webinar with principals sharing their ideas. And I am just totally in awe of all of you. We have never faced an issue like this in our careers ever. And there's no handbook that we can pull off the shelf and say, do this in this type of situation. We're really making those protocols up as we go along. And the creativity and the innovation and the reaching out to communities and to students is so vitally important in all of this, as well as you know, maintaining that school culture that we talked about a week or so ago, and helping our staff members through all of this too, virtually, which is really, really difficult to do. So I want to thank you all very, very much for that. And I'm totally in awe of all of you for doing that. So thank you. More than ever, do we need school leaders really to step up, and people are looking to us to take the ball and run with it, and you've all have done that, so thank you. So we're going to take a couple questions right now, but before we do that, I would just say to the people that are on our webinar, if there's a specific topic that you would like us to explore, to put a panel together. We've done student transitions, we've done school culture, we've done continuity of education plans. If there's a specific topic you want me to explore and get some principals to talk about that, just put it in the chat room or email me directly, and we'll make that happen some Thursday going forward, because I think we're going to be doing this for a while right now. So let's turn to see if we have any questions. Steph, do we have any?
Yes. How would being furloughed affect retirement?
How does being furloughed affect
retirement?
Yeah, so furlough would affect retirement as well. If you're furloughed, you're not working, you're not paying into the system. They're not paying into the system at this point. So it would have some effect on retirement, you know, going forward. So, so if you get furloughed, of course, and you're not near retirement, of course, those people would be exploring other options elsewhere in other districts going forward, or being called back if the budget would be turned around. That's another possibility after being furloughed.
Any thoughts about kindergarten registration?
So yes, we also wanted to talk about kindergarten registration. We didn't have any elementary principals that could join our call this week, but I just saw a survey that was put out. I was saying this before we got online with everybody about kindergarten registration, knowing that April is usually the prime month for kindergarten registration and getting parents in to register. And most what I've seen right now about kindergarten registration, and maybe our panelists can talk about this if they know about it at their district, but mostly what I've seen so far is people talking about moving the paper pencil tasks at kindergarten registration to some online versions and a central depository with the district, submitting those forms, verifying those forms, and contacting parents directly about what they need to submit and scanning those documents in. So that's one aspect of getting them registered. The other aspect, of course, of kindergarten registration that many of you do are the assessments that take place, whether that's vision, hearing screening, or some academic assessment that you have in place that you bring children in to help put those children in specific rooms and things like that. What I've heard about that is the same thing at graduation that some of you said. They have put out dates for June, July, and August. August is a little bit tough, especially for kindergarten registration, because the earlier the better. So they put out some dates in June and July to do those registrations at this point. So that's what I know about registration. I know there's a lot of more creative ideas out there. Any panelists, you know, for your district about kindergarten registration, if anything's been decided at this point? No? Okay. So stay tuned for that. As we get some more information, we'll be glad to share that as well.
What will you do for graduation if social distancing guidelines are in place through August?
So Maureen, maybe you can take this to start off. Can you unmute them, all of them? So one of the questions was, Maureen, I know you had a date in June, July, and August, but you get to August and that can't happen, and you're in a red zone or a yellow zone with the governor's new phases. What's the plan then?
What we talked about is doing a virtual type graduation. We've talked about a couple things, whether we do, virtually everybody get on and their names announced. We also talked about having students come in a staggered way and we actually present them. And that's type of a virtual where the distance of people come in one door, out another door. People have talked about even driving around the school and we present them their diploma through their window, but probably something more formal in a virtual type setting where keeping the social distance in place, but coming in, being able to walk across the auditorium stage rather than, or we could also do it out on the football field because that's where we usually have it when weather permits. So yes, those plans are already in place if for some reason we can't do that August date.
Yeah. And I know Ruth Ann talked about the virtual with the drive-in there, and Andrew talked about even waiting until September, for example, to do it on a Saturday, bringing kids in. Hopefully the ban would be lifted by that. So again,
what we're finding to be an issue with that is because of the students leaving for college. Obviously, we also, as soon as the June 4th date is up, we have students that are still going that have gone, gotten into the military that want to leave now.
Yeah.
So we have those situations right now that if they've fulfilled all their academic requirements up to this point, we're giving them their diploma so that they can move their date up sooner to leave.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's going to impact this quite going forward is the governor's plan right now that he announced last night, right? With the red, yellow, green zones, where some people may have graduation in June and some people are not going to have it at all, or maybe in August or September, right? We just don't know that depending on the cases that are in that region or that county at that time. But it sounds like that's going to be the plan going forward. And you all mentioned social distancing. That's going to be the key to allow us to have those gatherings going forward. Anything else in the queue?
Does anyone have any creative thoughts for recognizing retiring staff?
Oh, there's a good one.
Well, what I threw out to my staff was, because I do have about 6 of them that are retiring, and we feel our hearts broken for them because who would have thought they'd never stand in front of children again. So I guess what I'm doing is more of a personal level of the people in my building is as soon as we're allowed, I'm having an open house at my own home where my faculty and staff will be invited, just where people can come and honor those people. Because, big gatherings, we'll just have to see what restrictions are still in place, but that's what we've decided to do.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about retiring staff? Have you talked about that yet at your district level?
We haven't, but it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's something, yeah, I just wrote it down so I can start thinking about it. Yes, I think it's important.
What we've also done is the productions pushed out to the students and videos. We are doing a video for each of the retirees for the students and the faculty and staff so that they can see that, pictures with them with students and things like that. So it's hard for them too. It really is.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Steph, in the queue?
That
Questions?
looks like that's the last question.
Okay. So one other thing I did want to mention that I saw that came out late yesterday, and it's posted on our website if you need this. There has been some guidelines that came out from PDE and the Special Education Department on evaluations and reevaluations and what you are or not allowed to do virtually. So you might want to take a look at those guidelines. They just came out. They're pretty good to really to make it black and white, like what you can and cannot do with the evals and reevals. So you might want to take a look at that link that we posted on our website as well. Again, I want to thank our panel members, thank everybody else that is on the webinar. Join us next Thursday. And again, if you have a topic that you would like us to explore, put it in the chat room as you're leaving the webinar today, and we'll kind of take a look at those. And again, as I always say, stay healthy, stay safe. And on behalf of the Principals Association, I want to thank you all once again for the great job you're doing for all of the children in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks.